6 years ago, my sister abandoned her newborn daughter, forcing me to raise her in secret, then left to build an empire with 4 million followers, pretending to be a wealthy, childless woman. I spent my 20s quietly raising the child she abandoned, but her ultimate cruelty didn't happen the day she left. It happened tonight in a freezing emergency room. When her 6-year-old daughter needed emergency surgery to survive, my glamorous sister refused to sign the medical consent forms because a leaked hospital document would ruin her glamorous image at Paris Fashion Week. The emergency room at St. Jude's smelled faintly of bleach and stale coffee. Mia was curled on the stiff hospital bed, her knees pulled tight to her chest. She wasn't crying. That was the detail that broke my heart the most. Children who feel safe scream when they are in agonizing pain. Children who have been trained to be invisible just squeeze their eyes shut and wait for it to be over. The pediatric surgeon, a tired man with kind eyes, held a clipboard against his chest. "It's acute appendicitis, Elena. We need to operate before it ruptures. But the temporary caregiver letter you have isn't notarized for surgical consent. I need authorization from her biological mother immediately. A digital signature on our secure portal will suffice, but I need it now." I stepped out into the hallway, my fingers trembling as I dialed Chloe's private number. It went to voicemail twice. On the third try, she answered. "Elena, I told you not to call this number during Fashion Week," Chloe whispered harshly. The background was filled with the frantic clicking of cameras and the muffled voices of stylists speaking rapid French. "I am literally pinned into a $15,000 vintage gown for the Givenchy after-party." "Mia is in the hospital," I said, keeping my voice low so it wouldn't carry back into the room. "Her appendix is about to rupture. They need your consent to operate right now. Check your email. I sent the hospital's form. Just sign it digitally." There was a long, excruciating pause on the line. I could hear heavy fabric rustling. "I can't do that right now," Chloe said, her tone shifting from annoyed to carefully managed panic. "If my management team sees hospital documents on my phone, they'll start asking questions. I've spent 3 years burying the fact that I have a kid. If a leak happens right now, I lose the European campaign." "Chloe, she is 6 years old and she needs surgery." "Just tell them you're her mother, or ask for antibiotics," she hissed. "I can't deal with this, Elena. You're supposed to handle her. That's why I pay you." She didn't pay me. She sent sporadic, irregular transfers that barely covered Mia's groceries while posting photos of $1,000 caviar breakfasts. When Chloe showed up at my laundry shift 6 years ago with a newborn in a carrier, she was terrified and begging for help. "Just until I get my brand deals sorted," she had promised. "Just until I can afford a nanny." I took the baby because I loved my sister, and because the tiny girl looking up at me didn't have anyone else. Slowly, weeks turned into years. Chloe's brand exploded. Mia became a dark secret she couldn't afford to acknowledge, and I became the unpaid, silent caretaker expected to absorb the collateral damage of her fame. "Sign the form, Chloe," I said, my voice hardening into something sharp and cold. "Or I will hand this phone to the surgeon and you can explain your aesthetic to him." "If you make a scene and ruin this for me," Chloe warned, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm register, "I will cut off every dime I send you. You won't be able to make rent. You won't be able to feed her. I have to go." The line went dead. I lowered the phone. Through the glass window of the hospital room, I watched Mia weakly wipe a tear from her cheek, trying not to make a sound. Chloe thought the threat of poverty would force me back into submission. She thought I would just sit in the hallway, paralyzed by the fear of losing the little financial help she provided. She was wrong. The woman who had quietly washed clothes and raised a hidden child for 6 years died in that hallway. I walked back into the room, bypassed the surgeon, and looked directly at the hospital social worker standing near the desk. "My sister has abandoned her child," I said, my voice perfectly steady. "She refuses to provide medical consent. I need to invoke an emergency state override, and I want to speak to Child Protective Services right now." The state of California does not wait for a social media influencer's brand aesthetic when a child's appendix is about to burst. The social worker, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Vargas, immediately invoked a two-physician emergency consent protocol. It allowed the surgical team to bypass the mother's authorization to save Mia's life, while CPS simultaneously filed an emergency protective order with a family court judge. As the medical team wheeled Mia down the fluorescent hallway toward the operating room, I sat alone in the waiting area, listening to the heavy silence of the hospital at 2 in the morning. To keep my hands from shaking, I opened my phone. At the exact moment the surgeon was making an incision into her 6-year-old daughter's abdomen, Chloe uploaded a new photo to Instagram. She was standing on a cobblestone street in Paris, draped in the $15,000 Givenchy gown, holding a glass of expensive champagne. The caption read, "Living my absolute best life, unattached, unstoppable, and chasing the dream. Tang PFW, Tang self-made." Unattached. The word burned like acid in my chest. For 6 years, I had watched Chloe construct a multi-million-dollar empire built on the illusion of absolute freedom, while the physical proof of her past slept on a twin mattress in my cramped living room. I didn't leave an angry comment. I didn't send her a desperate message. Anger is a temporary release, but documentation is permanent. I opened a secure folder on my cloud drive and began building the architecture of my sister's downfall. I started with the foundation, the digital scan of Mia's original birth certificate, clearly listing Chloe's full legal name as the mother. Then, I downloaded 6 years of bank statements. Chloe never sent money directly from her personal accounts. She used a corporate LLC, labeling the sporadic transfers as consulting fees or NDA compliance to ensure no accountant ever flagged a dependent child. But her texts were not as careful. I took screenshots of every conversation where she demanded I keep Mia hidden. I saved the message from 2 years ago when Mia had a fever, and Chloe wrote, "Don't bring her to my condo. I have a brand sponsor coming over." Finally, I added the audio recording of the phone call she had just made, explicitly refusing medical consent to protect her European campaign. By the time the surgeon emerged to tell me Mia was safe and in recovery, I had compiled a digital dossier of undeniable, systematic neglect. Mia woke up just as the sun began to rise over Los Angeles. She looked incredibly small in the oversized hospital bed, an IV taped securely to the back of her tiny hand. She didn't cry. She just blinked against the harsh lights, saw me sitting in the chair beside her, and let out a long, shaky breath. She didn't ask for her mother. She hadn't asked for Chloe in 3 years. She simply reached out her good hand, gripped my fingers, and whispered, "I was quiet, Aunt Elena." That sentence shattered whatever lingering guilt I had about exposing my sister. Mia thought she had to be quiet to survive. She thought her existence was an inconvenience that needed to be apologized for. Ms. Vargas entered the room an hour later with a clipboard and a solemn expression. She informed me that the judge had signed the emergency order. Child Protective Services was opening a formal dependency investigation for medical abandonment. Influencers usually have aggressive legal teams, Ms. Vargas warned gently, keeping her voice low so Mia wouldn't hear. She might return and claim you kidnapped the child or that you kept her away out of jealousy. It happens more often than you think. I reached into my bag and handed her a printed copy of the folder I had assembled. "She is going to try to say exactly that," I replied, "but her aesthetic cannot argue with her digital footprint." My phone vibrated on the plastic tray table. It was a new text message from Chloe, sent from a VIP lounge across the Atlantic. "Hope the kid is fine. I'll Venmo an extra nam tram dola next week for the inconvenience. Do not text me again until I land in LA on Tuesday." I didn't reply. I just took one final screenshot, handed the phone to Ms. Vargas, and watched the social worker's eyes widen as she read the message. The trap was fully set. Chloe was flying home to an empty throne, completely unaware that her empire had just been dismantled from a hospital room. Chloe returned to Los Angeles on a Tuesday. By Thursday morning, she was sitting across from me in a windowless mediation room at the Los Angeles County Family Court. She wore a pristine white designer suit and oversized sunglasses, checking her phone with the irritated expression of someone attending an incredibly inconvenient business meeting. Assuming this was merely a PR extortion attempt by her resentful sister, she had brought a high-priced crisis management lawyer, who immediately placed a thick, leather-bound folder on the table. "This is clearly a massive misunderstanding," her lawyer began, using a smooth, patronizing tone. "My client is a prominent public figure. Her sister has a history of financial instability and jealousy. My client is willing to offer a generous one-time settlement of $50,000 to drop whatever civil claims you are imagining and sign a standard non-disclosure agreement." I kept my hands folded on the table. I didn't interrupt him. I didn't need to raise my voice or defend my character, because my anger was no longer driving the conversation. The evidence was. Ms. Vargas sat beside me. She didn't touch the settlement offer. Instead, she slid a manila envelope across the table. "We are not here to negotiate a non-disclosure agreement, counselor," Ms. Vargas said flatly. "We are here for an emergency guardianship hearing regarding criminal medical abandonment." Chloe scoffed, finally looking up from her phone. "Medical abandonment?" "I told her to get the kid some antibiotics. She's just trying to extort me." The lawyer opened the manila envelope. I watched his eyes scan the first page, Mia's original birth certificate. He turned to the second page, the bank records detailing the NDA compliance transfers from Chloe's corporate LLC. Then he reached the third page. It was a printed, time-stamped screenshot of Chloe's text message explicitly refusing to sign surgical consent forms because it would ruin her European fashion campaign. The silence in the room fundamentally shifted. The lawyer stopped breathing for a fraction of a second. He read the text message again, then slowly turned his head to look at Chloe. "You told me she was a crazy relative trying to extort you for media money," the lawyer whispered, his professional facade completely fracturing. "You didn't tell me you refused a life-saving surgical consent for your own biological child." Chloe's confidence faltered. "It wasn't life-saving, it was just an appendix, and I am paying you to fix this, so fix it." The lawyer closed the file, picked up his briefcase, and stood up. "I am a crisis management and contracts attorney," he said. "I do not represent clients facing state investigations for child endangerment. You need to find another lawyer." He walked out of the room without looking back. For the first time in 6 years, Chloe looked genuinely terrified. The armor of her wealth and her 4 million followers had vanished, leaving only a woman who had built a castle on a foundation of absolute lies. She looked at me, her hands finally trembling. "Name your price, Elena," she pleaded, dropping the volume of her voice. "Whatever you want. I'll buy you a house. I'll pay for her college. Just make this go away." "I don't want your money," I replied, my voice steady and quiet. "And I don't want revenge. I just want the record corrected. I want you to stay exactly what you claim to be to the entire world, unattached." The court granted me permanent legal guardianship that same afternoon. Chloe's parental rights were strictly limited, barring her from any unsupervised contact and permanently prohibiting her from legally claiming Mia as a dependent. In the influencer industry, secrets are a liability, and court records leave a trail. Within a month, a celebrity gossip outlet uncovered the dependency case. The internet did not forgive her. The narrative of the self-made, unattached socialite violently collided with the reality of a mother who let her 6-year-old face emergency surgery alone. The European fashion house dropped her campaign, citing a breach of their morality clause. Her sponsors vanished. The empire she had sacrificed her own child to build collapsed in less than a week. But I didn't celebrate her downfall because my focus was no longer on her. A year has passed since that night in the emergency room. Mia is 7 now. We live in a quiet, modest neighborhood, far away from the Los Angeles spotlight. She still has a tiny scar on her abdomen, but the deeper, invisible scars are finally beginning to heal. Yesterday, she dropped a glass of milk in the kitchen. It shattered across the floor. Instead of squeezing her eyes shut and staying quiet, she immediately called out for me, knowing she was safe enough to make a mistake. Sometimes, the people who share your blood will demand that you shrink yourself into the shadows so they can stand in the light. They will use your loyalty as a weapon against you. But family is not defined by who abandons you in the dark. It is defined by who stays in the hospital waiting room, holding your hand when you wake up. So tell me honestly, if you found out someone was building a perfect life by hiding the people who actually needed them, where do you believe the line between forgiveness and protection should be drawn?